Vermont.
Oh, yes. How was Vermont? I haven't been.
This time of year, we have lots of colors. So we
Okay.
get a lot of tourists coming through.
Okay, so maybe next year I'll be added to that list of tourists that visits Vermont. So I know today we're going to talk about your journey. As you share, there's incarceration, there's sexuality, there's conservative views, there's a whole gamut of things. But before we jump right into this, do me a favor, please introduce yourself, tell my audience a little bit about who you are, and of course, where they can find you.
My name is Matt Melvin. I wrote a book called Bullied Behind Bars: A Gay Christian Trump Supporter Goes to Prison. Your viewers can find me on Instagram, Bullied Behind Bars, X, Barsbullied, Facebook, Matthew.melvin.5621. You can email me, bulliedbehindbars@gmail.com, my website, www.bulliedbehindbars.com, and my book is available for purchase on Amazon.
Perfect. So right from the beginning, how old were you when you ended up in prison, and what did you go to prison for?
The first time I was in prison was in 2004. I worked at a car dealership. They didn't pay me my commissions, so I took matters into my own hand and tried to sell one of their vehicles. Got caught. Ended up in state prison for 18 months. I could have been eligible for the mental health court, but Judge Jeffrey Crawford and Bob Wolford decided I didn't meet the criteria, even though I have autism and I'm on the Asperger's spectrum. As a result, I could have had a clean record today if I had completed the program successfully, but instead I had to go through the regular court system. And when I got out, I couldn't pass a background check, so I used other people's information, and that was 2009. The government then pursued me for 6 years, finally got an indictment in 2016 in May, and I spent another 18 months in federal prison, went to 10 different facilities that time. Got out, and here I am today sharing my story because I don't want anybody to have to go through the pains and perils of what I went through.
That's quite the journey. I think you're outside of the interviews that I do, you're probably a few people that I've known that has a similar journey where they went to prison and they had to figure out themselves and their life after that. Looking back, Matt, um, when you realize that you're going to go to prison, what are some of the emotions that you remember experiencing?
Anger, frustration, fear, sadness. But I had a near death experience in August 2015. I was driving on 495 headed east when a Lexus SUV came down an embankment and literally crossed in front of my car. I was saved, but by the grace of God, within a couple seconds of getting smashed and my car being totaled. And it was at that point that I decided, and God really took a hold of my life. And instead of having God on my passenger seat, I now put God in the driver's seat.
Your faith, how important is that to you now, considering what you've gone through?
My faith is everything that I do stand for. It's absolutely pivotal. So anybody who questions my faith is not a friend of mine.
I grew up in the church at a very young age. I was there and then I kind of left it for a little bit and then I ended up back there in my late teens. I'm in my late 30s now. And I remember the foundation that it provided to me during those times. It represented so many aspects of my life that I would need actually time to even describe it because it was such a strong foundation. And sometimes I look at some people who may have maybe missed out on having that foundation there. If you didn't have your faith, where do you think you would have ended up then?
Today, if I didn't have my faith, is that what you're asking me? I would be a lost soul, like so many of these lost people that are going to these useless protests and protesting things that they don't even know what the organization or organizer stand for. I always suggest to people, if you're going to follow somebody or you're going to follow an organization, follow the money, find out who their donors are, how they're getting their money. And if you don't buy into everything that they stand for, walk away, because it's you got to make sure that the company has morals and they are uplifting people rather than demonizing people.
That part is key. I think we get trapped, right? Like let's say from a personal aspect, oh, he looks good, she looks good, and we're so focused on maybe the superficial, we don't, to your point, we don't dig deeper and say, okay, what is really going on, and what does this person, what does this place, what does this company stand for? Why do you think some people miss out on seeing some of the yellow flags or the red flags, and not only people but organizations as well?
Because they have blinders on, they don't ask the right questions. I am a salesperson, so I am probably one of the most difficult people to be sold. I've sold timeshares, I've gone to timeshares, and I am a very hard person to be sold because I've done a ton of selling. I've made money selling, and I ask a lot of questions. I dig down deep. I want to see where the money's going. I want to see who the donors are. I want to see tr- complete and utter transparency. And if I'm not given that, it's not an organization that I want to work for or an organization I want to be surrounded with.
I'm looking at my life and some of the difficulties I went to and what I went through in my 20s, now my 30s, and then as I enter my 40s. And I always say that you're a different person every 10 years. You learn something every 10 years, and hopefully you continue to grow. Because if you're not growing, then really, what are you doing at that point? As you got older in life, Matt, what's something that you learned that you wish you knew earlier on in your life?
To find, to ask questions, to be bold, to be courageous, to not allow somebody's wealth or power to influence you, to not to be bold in your convictions, ask questions, and not suck up to people. You know, my father always taught me, if I sucked up to people and pretended to like people, I could have gotten a lot farther in life. And that's how I've lived my life. I don't pretend to suck up to people I don't like. I know, and this is the Holy Spirit coming into me within 10 to 15 seconds, whether I'm going to like somebody or I'm not going to like somebody. And it very, very rarely changes. I'll give you an example. I joined a men's group several months ago. I talked to the group leader. Within 15 seconds, I knew that this guy and I were going to clash. I wasn't going to like him, and I knew he was a narcissist. And I knew that this group was not going to work out for me because this guy was a narcissist. He was a sociopath. He had strong convictions, and I don't think that's a wrong thing. It's good to have strong convictions. However, the problem is if you didn't agree with everything that he said, you were wrong. He blasphemed you. He criticized you. He went behind your back, and he was not a good ethical person. And so I ended up leaving the organization because it was not a faith-based organization and it was all smoke and mirrors.
How did you feel when you realized it was that way?
I was thankful that I figured it out early on rather than going deep with this group and getting hurt.
Some of the best lessons, so, although it being painful, can come from when we're hurt or disappointed, or when we realize, hey, you know what, something's a little bit off. Let me ask some questions, right? Were you always the type of person to ask these things to find out, or is this something that you had to learn?
No, I've always been the type of person that holds people accountable, asks questions. I'm very, I'm very, look, I view sales as a surgeon, trying to dig deep to find out what the problem is. A lot of people are going to tell you a surface problem. My job as a salesperson is to dig down deep to figure out really what's going on, figure out the pain. Because if I can't figure out the pain, I can't help that person. And most people are not going to tell you what their pain is. My job is with precision, asking the right questions to get down deep within the fat of that person to really find out what the pain is.
Earlier, you mentioned that you went to jail, and you mentioned that you went to jail as a gay Christian, and you mentioned some of these other things as well. In a reflective mode now, when you're looking back and you see from the time you left that part of your life until today, what are maybe some of the obstacles that you faced because of what has happened to you?
Not having trouble finding a job, you know, background checks in this country are prolific. Having trouble finding housing, having not being able to adopt a child, never being able to serve on a jury, my ability to join the military is compromised. I mean, all of these issues, I don't think people who don't have a record don't ever think about. A felony conviction, I have said, is a death sentence
In what regards is it a death sentence?
because it prevents a person from finding housing, finding a job. It makes it far more challenging than somebody who doesn't have a record. And it follows you everywhere you go. And I don't think people who don't have a record understand the pain. It is like going and finding, go and find a sandbag and start carrying that around everywhere you go. That is the way a person with a record feels every single day. Except most people can put that sandbag down. I will never be able to put that sandbag down until I'm with Jesus Christ in heaven.
It reminds me loosely, and since you're a religious man, like the mark of Cain, where wherever it is you go, people can identify you as such. And the impact is that you will become known for this as your life goes on. Is that how it feels? Like it's similar to that where wherever it is you go, it's something that people know about you before they understand who you actually are.
Yes, I mean, my record is right on the internet. I mean, there were multiple news organizations that went way above and beyond to cover my story. There was an article in the newspaper when I had requested to get off supervision early. That is excessive. These sick, twisted news organizations and the former police chief, Aaron Noble, who received a $200,000 payout from the town of Shelburne, vehemently didn't like me and went after me. And I think part of it is to try to get a news story because Vermont doesn't have the amount of news that other states may have. I firmly believe that if I did this in New York City, because of all the news that goes on, it probably wouldn't have gotten covered like it did in Shelburne, Vermont.
So in a way, do you think they were using your situation to become more prolific?
No question. From the police chief, from the news organizations, from the district attorney, from the judges, all of these people are incentivized to get convictions to move up within the organization.
So devil's advocate here, why do you then think it was so why you then instead of let's say maybe someone else? Why do you think it was you specifically, maybe not someone else?
I don't know because I was different. I was a gay man. I was a conservative. in a liberal state. I was
Oh, I see.
autistic.
So, okay, I see. So because of some of the things that you would identify with, such as autism and your religious background and your political background, and given the circumstances of where you lived, it was something that we can say, hey, this person that checks these boxes has committed this, so let's ramp up the coverage of it. Is that my understanding?
Absolutely. No question.
So now that you are working towards not being that person anymore and you're not that person anymore, where do you think you can go from here?
I want to share my story. I want to get out and talk to groups that are engaging in small crimes. You know, my story didn't start in 2004 with stealing a car. It started with speeding, driving off without paying for gas. These small crimes that were not dealt with properly, and it accelerated.
So for those listening, let's say for example me, I haven't been to jail before, and I know of people and I've interviewed people that have, but no one really close to me, meaning in my circle, has done any jail or prison time. For us who are, for the most part, on the outside looking in, how can we assist those like you, people like you, who have experienced this type of situation?
By welcoming us, by not criticizing us for our past mistakes, by being different, being bold, helping your neighbor, being like Jesus. You know, we all know the story of the Last Supper. We know that Judas was going to betray Jesus. However, Jesus treated Judas the same way he treated the other disciples. That is very challenging, but that is what we as believers are called to do every single day, every single moment, not just when it feels right or on Sundays.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you mentioned not on Sundays because you're right. Like if you want to live a better life, there's a Monday, there's a Tuesday, there's a Wednesday, there's all these other days during the week. How important do you think it is for people to remember that if you're going to be helpful, if you're going to do good deeds, make sure you do it all the time and every day throughout the week?
If a tree falls in the woods, does it really make a sound? Of course it makes a sound. So Jesus is watching us every single day. It's almost more important in those moments that we're alone, where there aren't people around us. How are we acting? And I always look at it this way: Jesus up in heaven, every decision I make, is he clapping or is he nodding, shaking his head in disbelief? And that's how we have to think about it. It's not how we act when people are around, because generally, when people are around, we will try to appear better than we actually are. It's those moments when we're by ourselves. What are we doing? How are we bringing more people to the faith?
How can we make sure that we're living a life that is in line with such beliefs?
I think it all starts from the beginning of the day by having 8 principles, disciplines that are Christ like. For example, praying, reading my Bible, getting in shape, exercising, fasting, diet, what we're eating, what we're consuming, surrounding ourselves with positive people, eliminating the negative talk, and having a good positive image of ourselves, having self-love. If that means standing in the mirror and saying, I love you, I accept you, I'm worthy. If you as an individual cannot say that to yourself, there is no way you're going to be able to love another person, help another person. And if you are one of those people that needs affirmation from another person, you will always be disappointed. I know when I expect my friends are going to call me, I am always disappointed. I know when I have expectations of another, I will always be disappointed.
Very, very true. I 100% agree where you need to find not only your self-worth, you need to find your happiness within yourself. You need to make sure that you're showing yourself love. I've shared this with numerous people. But recently I told this person, I said, you need to be able to love yourself and then show the world how you want to be loved. Because if you don't know how to love yourself, you won't be able to communicate it properly. Do you think there are gaps then where with people who are trying to find love, but they don't even know how to love themselves? So when they go out there looking for it, they're kind of lost.
Yes, if a person doesn't love themselves, they can't help another person. Look, if I don't know my Bible, how can I go out and disciple to people? I have to first be very knowledgeable. And how did I get that knowledge? That's a good question. Well, when I was in prison, we had cults, Jehovah's Witness, Scientology, Christian Science. These organizations would come in and prey upon people at their lowest point of their life and promise them that love, because a lot of men that are in prison because they came from broken homes, they didn't have a father figure, and so they're looking for that love. Unfortunately, these cults are misleading. They promise them that love and then they want you to fork over a whole bunch of money. So I went to hear what these people had to say and then did my own research and found out that what they were saying was false, that they were cherry picking verses out of the Bible that sounded good and made their organization uplifted, but they themselves were not living the Christian lifestyle. Then I did my own research. I got into the Bible. And I don't care who you are, you need to be in that Bible every single day, studying, reading for yourself, doing research, because the Bible is the most complex book that has ever been written. There is past, present, and future. So I have to understand the content, the context, who it was written to, Jew or Gentile, when it was written, what is going on before and after to understand everything that's going on. Because I've heard some insane things come from the pulpit of various pastors. And I always ask questions. Where are you getting that? Where in the Bible does it say that? Because anybody can spew hatred or spew anything from the pulpit. I have to ask questions. And if a pastor can't tell me where it's set, where in the Bible it's mentioned, what they're saying is fake. It's not real.
That's an excellent point because I think, and you mentioned this earlier, what we consume. And I think a lot of the things that we consume, we don't realize how toxic it is to us. For example, the type of movies maybe we watch, the type of shows, music, people that we let not only into our lives, but into our bedrooms, for example, right? Food, knowledge. I think if we did a better job at filtering out some of the noise, wherever its origin, work, people, places, things, we could be on a better path forward. What are your thoughts on people who maybe are distracted by all these different things that they're consuming and they don't know if one is healthy or if one is holding them back?
Does it uplift God? Is it helping me in my spiritual journey? Or is it toxic? Is it dangerous? Is it complaining? Is it not healthy? I mean, I think it's very easy. And I could tell you sports are not good, video games are not good. This Halloween nonsense, you can't be a Christian and celebrate a day of evil. Just can't happen. Okay. Every holiday is doesn't lift up God. Okay. I just got to put it out there. There is no uplifting holiday, other than I would say Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King Day is by far my favorite holiday. That man was the best orator this country has ever seen. And he was killed because he would have become the next president of the United States. And this country would have been so far better off if that man became president.
Yeah, there's so many things that have maybe not been fulfilled and has been to a detriment of maybe the person, let's say their potential, let's say events like you just mentioned, to the country, to the world. And it just seems we have to do the best on an individual level, then as a community, to protect ourselves. When it comes to the community now and some of the work that you're doing and some of the awareness that you want to bring, how are you helping the community in that regard to make sure that they stay focused on maybe the things that they need to stay focused on?
By going to events that uplift God, helping people to become better citizens, getting involved in organizations that don't have baggage.
Do you think some people have baggage that they can't overcome?
No, I don't. We all have every one of us, terrain has baggage. It's what how we fuel and become better given that baggage.
Sometimes I wonder when you point out the baggage that someone has, ultimately, and maybe some people are going to hate this comment, Matt, you have two choices, right? Either you're going to continue on with the baggage or you're going to do something about it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's what I ultimately think.
Right.
Go
So
ahead.
I went to a men's weekend, right? And so part of our assignment was to find three rocks. They could be any size. And what we did with those rocks, and those rocks represented burdens. We put those in our backpack and we carry those around because that's what we do as human beings. We carry around burdens in our life. And you know what we did at the end, or I did at the end? I threw those burdens in the lake. Some of the men put them down, gently put them next to themselves. That is a key principle. That's how some people live because those people that put the burdens right next to their life, as soon as they left the weekend, they were going to pick them back up
Why do you think people are picking up their burdens after temporarily letting them go?
because that's what they know. We as human beings want to live in comfort. We don't want to expand our horizon and go out in the middle of the ocean. I'm an ocean swimmer, so I give this analogy. I love going out deep where there could be a shark, there could be a whale. Who knows? There's a risk, okay? Most people want to stay safe. They want their feet in the water a little bit because they can come and go as they please. But because I don't fear, I'll go out in the middle of the ocean and put my, you know, do a swim, and I don't really care. You know, when a shark bites people, it's most often because that person is in fear or they're scared. Because a shark is a brilliant creature. It can sense when a person is scared, fearful, full of anxiety. And that's when a shark is going to bite.
So, man, let me ask you this final question before we go. And what I want to do is I want to give you three wishes. And these are things that you can wish for in regards to this question that people knew, sorry. What are three things you wish people knew about themselves and why?
I wish people knew that they are loved. I wish people knew about God and accepted him in his life. And I wish people would surround themselves with positive people and rid themselves of every single toxic complainer out of their life.